Well, good morning and afternoon. Looks like we've got a few folks on, but we're gonna give it a few more minutes um, until it looks like we're at capacity. So welcome everyone. And like I said, we'll just give it a few more minutes for people to come in, and then we'll jump right into the exciting topic of your search strategy and what's changing. Let's see, getting close. All right. Well, I think we are where we're going to be. Let me share my screen for you. All right. So hopefully y'all can see that. Um, First of all, welcome to NetReputation's webinar series. I'm Megan Geiss. I am the head of SEO here at NetReputation, and we get to talk about that in a minute. But what I think you all are here for is to really understand what's happening in the search space and in visibility and how AI and LLMs are really changing um, what that search landscape is and how we can look at attribution. So we're going to dive into a bunch of those topics today and a little bit more. Um, and let's see, first, great big old picture of me. Um, I am the director of SEO here at NetReputation. I've been in digital marketing for over 20 years, but really focusing on SEO the last 15. I am a total SEO nerd. I love that SEO is an unknown, and it always is, right? There are things we do know, but there's a whole lot of gray area, and there's a whole lot of things that just continue to change. And as we add AI and LLM to our landscape, everything's changing even faster. So the shifts we're seeing today, I think, are the biggest shifts we've seen. And I personally think it's super exciting. It's kind of why we all work in this space. It keeps us working because we can't sit back on our laurels. We've got to be really smart about what we're doing and really thoughtful about our strategies and very flexible because we know that our search strategy today may not be what it needs to be tomorrow. Which really leads us into this, right? The ground is shifting. It's not what it was. Most search strategies were built for a world that just doesn't exist anymore. Um, I think about clients of mine who have had amazing strategies, built out great keywords and content, and have that technical chops in the background. And so their rankings are doing really, really well, right? So they're watching keyword rankings going up. And this is such a great trend, and we all want to see it, right? And normally, we would see that organic traffic kind of following along. Um, the change now, the shift is that even if you're seeing this, we might see organic traffic starting to do a little bit of this, right? A little bit of a downward trend. Um, and so there's a gap there. And what does that mean? And how do we fix it? Because we all know that our C-level folks don't want to see organic traffic declining. And you can tell them that your keywords are killing it, but they're saying we're not getting the traffic, we're not seeing the conversions. So, what I want to help you do is I want to arm you for how to show up better and how to talk about it too, because I think that that's super important. So, over the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about how the Google results have evolved. Really what are the changes and how they're happening. And we know that the biggest change there is LLM visibility. So we're going to talk about how AI decides who gets shown and what we can do to be there the best that we can be. And then the attribution gaps again. So your rankings are here, traffic is here, there's that gap. How can we try to identify what's happening in that gap so that you can talk to it and show the value of the work that you're doing? And then we're going to talk about three, actionable things that you can do. All right, so let's dive in, shall we? What's actually changing in the search results? So, um, the SERP is more diverse than it's ever been. Um, there are listicle heavy queries that surface. We're seeing more product pages. We're seeing, rather than just home pages being in the SERP, we're seeing a lot of deeper pages, right? So that SERP is changing on top of what AI is doing. Um, and what and an idea of that, right? So a few years ago, a search query like best CRM software, right? Your page one was going to be just the home pages for G2, Capterra, Salesforce, handful of them, right? It isn't the same anymore. Today, you would see maybe HubSpot's product page or Salesforce's industry page or Asana's use case page or somebody else's case study or a roundup of listicles. Like we're just seeing that the SERP looks different. So some things we need to be aware of there, like the cannibalization trap. Um, we've all seen duplicate content in the past, and we made sure to manage that when it was true duplicate content, so we didn't have that cannibalization. But what we're seeing now is um, companies that scaled listicle volume may be bleeding traffic to their own pages, right? So what does that mean? It means that maybe you don't have true duplicates, but you have pages that are talking about similar things, similar concepts, similar products, and LLMs don't really know what to do with that. So we need to manage those pages that are cannibalizing other pages and make sure that we put those top pages in the spotlight, which is that next box down there, making sure that we have solid industry pages, use case pages, your ideal customer profile specific pages. These are becoming higher priority ranking factors. So something that we need to be focusing on and making sure we're building content around those that make sense for our users. And I'm also not saying that listicles are dead. They're just more targeted. So we don't want to use grand terms for listicles. We really want to look at different variations of keywords and maybe keywords that don't even justify their own landing page. But how can we get those keywords out there to maybe rank for? Listicles are a great way to use those. So they're definitely not dead when it comes to the SERP. And I think that for LLMs, they're really important. So we do need to keep them within all of our content strategies. We just maybe look at them a little bit differently. So hopefully that all made sense. Um, and we'll dive into, I don't know why my mouse isn't going. There we go. Um, Specifically more on the LLMs and how are they deciding who to surface? And there's a reason why I have that who to trust in green. That is becoming so important today. The trustworthiness of your site, of your pages, are what the LLMs are looking to see. Um, and we're going to talk through that here in the next few pages. All right, talking a lot. I need a little water. All right, so freshness is a trust signal. And what does that mean, right? It's no longer a nice to have. It is actually a trust signal. So if you've got old stale content, that's a liability. AIs are rewarding consistent, up-to-date, descriptive content that is good for your users. And I'll give you an example of a conversation I literally just had this week with a potential client. They came to us for a number of SEO challenges, but one of them is that their content is not showing up pretty much anywhere, right? Their rankings have really dropped off. They're not showing up in any citations anywhere, and they're wondering why. And just a quick look at their blog, they didn't have anything, a single blog post since 2024. Well, that's not fresh. The LLMs are looking at that and saying, do you even care about your website? Do you care about your content? Because the world is changing really fast. And if your content isn't changing, are you staying up to speed? That's a trust factor. So we really want to be sure that we are updating content. And I'm not talking about writing brand new content constantly, although that is a good thing. You can take your old content and just freshen it. Don't just change the date because Google's going to see that and you don't want to do that, but actually put in information that is important. Um, Maybe update an infographic, update some of the statistics. Make sure your content is fresh. Super important. All right, then multi-source consistency. I think this one's pretty interesting, right? Where um, your homepage may say that you are a marketing platform. And then maybe your company LinkedIn description says your growth software, right? And maybe you've had a press release that just calls you a CRM. Well, now you've taught the LLMs that you're all these different things rather than focusing on the one and making that be the strongest one, right? So you need consistency in how you're describing your brand across all of these different entities. And these are entities that you own what that content is, right? So decide what you're going to be, pick it, use that language over and over again. Don't diversify. Don't think that, and I do think that this is something we went through years ago in the SEO space, that we wanted to rank for all those different versions of those keywords. And so we thought, well, if we use this one here and this one there and this one there, we're going to rank for all of these. And that worked back in the day. It doesn't work anymore. We want to have what that consistent message is because LLMs, if you're all over the place, they see that you are all these different things, and therefore they're not going to cite you for the one thing that is most important. So that's a big piece of advice here. Um, then when we look at number three there, own something specific. Stop claiming best overall, right? You want to be something specific. You want to be best, if we're again back to sort of the CRM example. You want to be maybe your best for enterprise, best for small business, best for whatever that is. But when you are best overall, that's just sort of um, undermining the value of who you are. Again, we talked about very briefly your ideal customer profile. Be best for who that is. And that may take a little digging within your business to really determine, but it's important. So again, be specific, don't be so general, so that the LLMs can understand really what your business is about. Hopefully, you're seeing a bit of a theme here in all of these, right? And then you're going to align your controlled assets. So, what we talked about earlier with LinkedIn, with any third party profile that you have access to, make sure you're reinforcing that same positioning, using the same exact terminology so that LLMs are really understanding who you are and they're not getting any kind of a mixed signal. So, really, these four things are all saying the same things in different ways, but really important that we have consistency. That's the bottom. To get that trust, you need to be consistent in your messaging so that the LLMs can cite you the way that you want to be, and you can win. All right, so you've done all these things, and now you're starting to maybe win in the AI race. You're starting to be cited. How are you going to share that? This is where, early on I talked about how do you have that conversation with your C-level folks because they're seeing traffic dropping off. We know that in general, links aren't happening um, in the AI space. So how do you show them that you're actually doing your job, you're doing it really well, and the site is performing? That's a hard one, right? So It's the traffic you're not seeing or getting credited for. And, we know that someone may ask a question to Chat GPT. You get cited, right? Your brand is surfaced there, which is awesome. And then that user copies your brand name, puts it in a new window, does a search. What happens there? Probably paid search is showing up first. Maybe they just went directly to your website. So this traffic is getting cited as direct, as paid search, or as branded organic search, which us SEOs who've been doing this a long time doesn't feel like it's our best work, right? Branded search your company should be getting. So how do we capture the fact that we're doing our jobs and we're showing up, but we're not getting any credit for it? I'm going to hear a collective groan if your microphones were turned on that we really need to do this with self-attribution. I know it feels to us like that sucks because one, you don't feel like anybody's going to fill it out. When you do it when it's a required field, we generally can lose conversions. So what do we do? First of all, you do have it as an open-ended field. I know that from a data perspective, that makes it a little bit more challenging to aggregate your data, but we're finding that open-ended text fields are outperforming multi-choice. I know that feels counterintuitive. It does to me too, but I've read multiple studies on this, and we're seeing that these open-ended text forms are actually outperforming. But again, you don't make them required, they're optional. And if you're really worried about conversion, put them at the end, right? When you have a form fill, put them at the end of the form. I don't think you're going to find that it hurts conversion, and it's going to allow you to track, at least to some extent. Some percent of the people are going to be willing to tell you where they heard about you, how they got to your website. Um, it's sort of all we have right now to do. It's like I said, I heard a collective groan. I think I'm still hearing it. Um, but I dare you to try this because I think you will be surprised based on what I've seen that this could actually work to at least give you some insights. I'm not saying it's going to work across the board. You're not going to get 100% completion. You probably won't even get 50%, but you will get some. And if you get some, you know you're being cited and you know that it matters. All right. So we've talked about a lot of things. Um, but really, what is your action plan? I have on here what to do this week. Let's just call it the next week and a half since it's Wednesday. But what can you do right now to help your website be visible? All right. So, number one, what we talked about, audit for cannibalization. So, review where your listicles and your product pages are competing for the same queries. Pretty simple. Decide which one should win, and then either consolidate, redirect, or differentiate, right? Don't let your traffic split that value, split that authority so that the LLMs don't know which one should win. We want a very clear signal. This is the page that wins for this term, right? So do that audit. Um, then choose one specific positioning claim. So we've talked about this. Be consistent. Pick the one claim that you are, right? You are a CRM. Use CRM over and over and over in any place where you own those mentions. Make sure you are consistent. Don't use all the different variations because you want to capture those varied keywords. Guess what? We have content on your website for that. We need to be sending that signal to the LLMs of what you are, who you are, and it's got to be very specific and very consistent. And that's where we're going to gain the trust. We talked earlier, trust is so important if we want to be cited. So, Choose one specific positioning claim. And then how are we going to attribute this traffic? Keywords are up, traffic is slightly down, there's a gap, but we're performing. What's happening? Let's try to attribute where that difference is. So, in your form fills, just a quick, how did you hear about us? Make it open-ended, don't have it be drop down, and make it optional. This is the way you're going to capture how people are getting to your website. If we can't do it in any other way, GA4, we're not getting that attribution yet, and maybe this will change someday. But today, we've got to be able to show how successful our SEO and AEO efforts have been. We've got to be able to demonstrate that to our C levels because I know they're getting frustrated out there when they're seeing some of these drop offs. And this is how you're going to help bridge that gap. All right. Those are your three actionable items. I really believe you can, if you put this in your to-dos to get done by next Friday, you can do this, right? It's not that hard. It really isn't. So the goal isn't volume, it's precision, consistency, and always genuine helpfulness, right? Your content should be genuinely helpful. Um, Answer real questions clearly. You're gonna win. All right. And that, my friends, concludes today's webinar. And we're going to open it up to some questions. So I think there is a Q&A button on your screen. Um, so I'll give it a minute here and see if we get any questions. I hope you guys have found this really informative. I will tell you that, like I said, I'm a total nerd. I love to talk about this. If any of you feel like reaching out, having a conversation, I am absolutely here. Would love to talk to any of you about what I think about this, what I'm reading. I spend a ton of time, perusing all the industry data and seeing what everybody else is seeing because that's how we're going to win too, is by as kind of an SEO AEO community, sharing information is really how we're going to win. All right, so I got a question here. You said listicles can cannibalize our product pages. How do I actually run a cannibalization audit? Okay, and then how do I decide what page wins? So that's a great question. I think in GSC, you can pull a list of every URL and then sort them on the queries they're ranking for. And when you filter them by query, look for pages that, or look for queries that have two or more pages that are getting impressions for that same query. There's your candidate list, right? From there, look at those pages and think about, which page has the highest conversion intent, maybe which already has the stronger backlinks, better authority, which one's already being rewarded. So don't just look at the impressions, look at more the bigger picture and say, okay, which of these pages should win? And then once you decide that, you need to decide what your strategy is going to be, whether you're going to redirect, do you want to lose that first page completely? Or do you want to put a canonical tag? Or do you want to maybe refresh what that content is so they're not competing, right? So I think that that's how I would best combat the cannibalization. So hopefully that answered that one. Um, Okay, so kind of piggybacking off of that, how often should we be updating older content to keep the freshness signal working? Um, so similar to the cannibalization audit, look at your top 20 or 30 revenue driving pages. Those pages, I would make meaningful updates to them every 3 to 6 months. I don't think it needs to be some big overhaul. It doesn't need to be some huge, cosmetic change, but just maybe some new data. I think I talked about this a little bit, some refreshed examples, new takes on the data. Um, I think that that's what you can do. You don't have to rewrite everything, but freshen it up. Um, and then I do think the rest of your pages, especially those heavy content pages, put them on your calendar to cycle through maybe once a year. Um, you do want to have some sort of freshness, I think, within a 365-day period for as much as you can. And they're not looking for like Google today is not rewarding pages that are recently touched. They're rewarding pages that are recently improved. So keep that in mind that when you do a content refresh, you're actually improving what's on the page. Maybe it's more topical today. Again, maybe you have new data, something along those lines. Um, so hopefully that helps. Um, oh, where does paid search fit into all this? Do we cut it or do we double down? Boy, neither. You don't ever, I mean, don't cut paid search. Paid search serves a purpose, right? And actually, as we're talking about attribution gaps, it can help us sort of cover that gap a little bit. Um, it can help with branding defense, where maybe your competitors are buying your branded keyword. You definitely need to keep that defense up. Um, One thing I've always liked to use paid search for is to help me understand maybe some new positioning ideas, maybe new content ideas. You can get really quick results, right? And do that before you build big content pages. So I think paid search serves a purpose there. And then if you do, like if your sales cycle is really short and you have sort of immediate intent transactional keywords, I think that paid search plays a role there. So don't get rid of it. Um, don't double down on it because it's not going to give you, I don't think, and I'm going to get killed for saying this from some of my PPC friends. It's not going to make up that gap we're seeing, but it can help, right? It can absolutely help. All right. Oh, we're almost out of time. I want to do this one real quick because this one's super interesting. How do we know if our brand is showing up consistently across LLMs? And that's a really great question. I think it's one that we're all sort of asking ourselves. Um, from a manual perspective, open ChatGPT, open Gemini, Claude, prompt each of them with the same exact questions you think a buyer would ask. What does your fill in your brand name do? Look at how each of them responds. Screenshot it because you're going to get different response, which is going to be super interesting. You're going to have inconsistencies and whatever. Um, and then start, I would do that on a monthly basis, tracking it. And as you're starting to do these things we've talked about, you'll get an idea whether your positioning work is really moving the needle. Um, Feels like a lot of work. It is pretty manual if we're being honest. Um, but there are tools out there that can help you do this. There are services out there. I'm going to plug NetReputation right now because we actually do offer this as a service. Um, we have built out our own tool that tracks what's happening, your citations, positive, negative, whatever. Um, and we do that on a monthly basis, and we can go pretty deep with this. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know. I'm happy to point you in the right direction of my colleague who manages that. But certainly something again to help you show your C-level folks that you're doing a good job because we're not seeing it in general attribution reports. And with that, we are actually exactly at time. I see there's a couple more questions. I will personally email you and reply to your questions because we've got some more good ones in here. I appreciate all of your time and I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. And I hope you just keep being visible. Thank you.